Colour or black and white. It's a creative choice that we can make that changes not only the look of an image but also the feel and the mood. And in today's video I thought I'd talk a little bit about when and why I choose to take colour out of the equation and go monochrome. I hope you'll enjoy the video. If you do and you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for another One Wednesday. It's the extra video I put out one Wednesday every month when I cover topics that I don't feel fit too well into my normal weekly in the field photography videos. And today I really want to talk about black and white and when and why I make the choice to go black and white, to go monochrome. I should start off by saying that in the past I almost never did black and white. Almost all of my images were colour. But in the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I've started to embrace the monochrome look a little bit more. It's still probably a smaller percentage of my images, but I do more of it now than I used to. I've even got a whole section on my website which is devoted to black and white. And one of the interesting things I find about black and white is when it comes to the editing process, you can be more aggressive than you can with colour. You can take the whites up or boost the contrast or whatever in ways that if you do with a colour image just looks horrible, it looks unnatural. But with black and white it can actually add to the effect. Not always, but sometimes. When I started looking into black and white a few years ago, I was given a piece of advice, and that was if you want to get really good black and white images, you need to go out with a plan to photograph in black and white. That's when you get the best images. But I've got to be honest, that's not always the case with me. In fact, more often than not, it's not the case. Sometimes I do, like when I went out a few weeks ago specifically to do some long exposure minimalist type images, and I actually did a video about my long exposure process. And on that one I very definitely went out with a plan to shoot in black and white. Because these are going to be black and white anyway, I'm going to change the picture profile to monochrome so that I can see what it's going to look like. And the images I got from that, like this one, are an example of how you can push the editing a bit more. You can see I've gone for a very, very high key look. If I'd done that on a colour image, it probably wouldn't look very good. But on black and white, I think it works. I think it works. I like it anyway. So although very occasionally I go out with a plan to shoot black and white, I'm actually normally much more opportunistic. I'll go out and I'll see a scene and I'll think, actually that might make for a good black and white image. This is the motorway bridge. I'm kind of thinking maybe a high contrast black and white. And this image is actually a pretty good example of, again, being aggressive with the editing technique. I've pushed the contrasts a long way on this. And again, do that in a colour, it would probably look very unnatural and very unpleasant. But in black and white, I think it works. Maybe it's because black and white is already an unnatural view for us, so you can get away with some of those things. And sometimes I go out to shoot, and even when I'm taking the image, I'm not 100% sure which way it's going to go. 0.4 seconds, f11, ISO 100 at 55mm. This image could have gone either way. I shot it as a colour image, and to be honest, when I first started playing around with it, I kind of had it half in mind it was going to be colour, but then I just decided to have a look at it as a black and white, and I much preferred it. So I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes I plan to shoot black and white, but not very often. Sometimes I make a decision when I see a scene that I think it will make for a nice black and white image, and sometimes I'm not even sure whether it's going to be colour or black and white until I get it back on the computer and start having a look at it. And actually there's another category as well, if you like, where sometimes I'll create an image all in colour and I like the colour image, but at some point in the future I'll go back and look at it and decide to try a black and white. More on that a little bit later in the video. Let's talk about what for me drives the decision to go either colour or black and white. And the first thing is, what is the image actually about? If you've got, a nice sunrise or sunset image, the chances are that colour plays an important part and may even be the main kind of subject, if you like, in that image. You could almost certainly take this image and convert it to black and white, but the image would no longer be about what it was about. It will be about something else, because this image is mostly about the colours that we got as the sun was going down. So to take it to black and white would kind of be defeating the object. Another question that you have to ask is, even if the image isn't about the colour, does the colour add something significant to the image? I went out a few weeks ago and photographed the water route at Saya after heavy rains. I really wanted to get an image with that big cascade in the midground, the mountains in the background and a bit of sky, but I wanted that little cascade that's coming in from the side there in the frame as well, over on one side, and then the stream of water goes up to the big cascade, which is roughly in the middle of the frame. Now this image isn't about colour, it's actually about the water moving and the texture in the water, and quite often for me that would be an ideal candidate for a black and white image, because black and white will help to bring out that texture and make the image much more about that. But in this case I felt that the colours, particularly that green colour in the water as it was flowing through, and even things like the oranges on the trees up in the background, which you can probably only see on a large version of the image, but even they added something to the scene, and to go black and white with this would have lost something important from the image. So I decided to stick with colour. But there are times when the colours don't add anything to the image. In fact, they detract from what the image is about. Colour images use colour as part of the composition, differing colours through the scene, colour contrasts within the scene. They actually form a part of what leads your eye through the frame. In black and white images are much more about lines and textures, and of course luminosity, contrast, just bright and dark. And I think a good example of that is the image that I shot the same day, in fact only a short time before the sunset image that I recently showed you. Okay, now for a long exposure. Now this image, this long exposure, was about the contrasting textures and contrasting light, the luminance, the dark and light, the contrasting lines leading into the bright area with the mountain in the background. In colour, well actually the colours weren't that nice at all. And certainly I felt that they subtracted something from the image. They were a distraction to what the image was actually about. And so this was an obvious choice for me to go black and white. Now I mentioned earlier that sometimes I shoot an image and process the image in colour and I like it, and sometime later I go back and look at it and just decide to have a play with a black and white. And that's what's actually happened on a very recent image. Just a couple of videos ago I was out trying to get a large scene, basically photographing a whole mountain. Okay, the sun is breaking through the clouds there, and I can see the first signs of a little bit of light hitting parts of the mountain, so it's going to pick out some detail. That might just be enough to make this scene work. I'm going to wait till it comes through a little bit more. Hopefully that light will get a bit stronger, and I'm going to take a shot. When I shot that image, I envisaged it in colour. When I got it back on the computer, I liked the contrast, the colour contrast between the warm kind of yellowy orange tones being picked out on the mountain, because actually that's the colour of the rocks, and the dark deep blue that was coming out of that really quite moody sky with no real light in it. And I actually felt that the colours added something to it. So I processed it in colour, and I like the image, particularly because I really didn't think I was going to get something that I liked there. I struggled with the composition on that particular trip out. But by cropping the image down and by timing the shot to make use of what was actually probably only 30 seconds to a minute of light breaking through the clouds and hitting the mountain, I got an image that I think is pretty nice. But I kept looking at it. Even after I'd created the video and put the video out there, I just kept glancing at it, and in the end I thought, I've got to see what this looks like as a black and white, because as a black and white, as I said earlier, I can be more aggressive with the editing. I can put a lot more contrast in there, and that's what I did. I went black and white, I put a lot of contrast in, I put, you know, quite a vignette, dark vignette into the scene as well, and this is what the image looks like. Now this no longer looks like the scene that I photographed. It was not that dark, and the scene that I photographed definitely wasn't black and white. But I think it's actually quite a strong image now, and I think I actually prefer it to the colour version. In fact, I know I prefer it to the colour version. So here's the question. Should I have gone black and white in the first place? Well, actually, I'm quite happy that I did the colour version first, because as I said, I like the colour version, and other people will like the colour version as opposed to the black and white, because not everybody likes black and white. And for me, if I process an image in black and white, I almost never go back and redo it in colour to see what it looks like. But I quite often, as I've just said, will take an image that I'm perfectly happy with in colour and do the whole thing again as a black and white and see what it looks like. I don't know why that is, but it just always seems to work that way. So I'm pretty happy that I did this as a colour one first, because I think the colour image was worth doing, but I think the black and white is a stronger image. Okay, that's it for another video. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I'd be interested to hear your views on the two last images in particular, you know, the colour of the mountain and the black and white of the mountain. Which one do you prefer? I know I've already said I think I prefer the black and white, but tastes vary, of course. And I'd also be interested in hearing your views on the whole colour, black and white decision debate, and anything else you want to share. Always happy to hear from you, and comments are always very, very much appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, you know the routine, likes, shares, all very much appreciated. If you're new here and you like landscape photography videos and you like what you've seen of what I'm doing, don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you go. And as always, I really appreciate everybody taking the time to watch my videos, so thank you very much. And until the next video. Bye.